Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. The moment we've all been waiting for. The critics have spoken. And mostly, it's an overwhelming positive. But let me just say one thing. To the critics complaining about the 3-hour length of this film, you are the same people who got a boner about Endgame being 3 hours. So you have absolutely no right to be complaining about this masterpiece being 3 hours long. This movie needed 3 hours. It needed that breathing time. It needed that length. And it's fantastic that the studio allowed it to be 3 hours. It's fantastic that the director wanted it to be 3 hours. There was an even longer cut, which he never wanted to put out there. He didn't think it should be that long. Villager, hi, mate. The Snyder Cut are having breakdowns. Ha ha ha. Yeah, they're having a bit of a mare. They can't stop the future. They've lost. Simple as that. Ronnie Dodge, the Batman is on 96% Rotten Tomatoes with 71 reviews, with some people calling it the best CBM in a while. In terms of other CBMs, this is extremely different. Extremely different. And this is art. This is an art house CBM. A bit like Man of Steel and BVS, more accurately, is an art house type of movie. Not for everyone, but this one, wow. Hi, Mick. How are you today? John, I'm doing very well. So shall we get into some of these reactions? I'm going to read you out the brief reactions on Twitter, but we're also going to read some non-spoilery reviews from the elite sites as well. Ronnie Dodge, tomatoes, I knew exactly what you meant, Ronnie. Rotten tomatoes. Or is it rotten eggs? I don't know. But anyway, let's go. This is from Ben Rolfe. Here is my Batman review for discussing film. It's an easy 5 from me. What makes the Batman stand out among cinema's most lucrative genre is exactly how it internalizes Batman struggles. The Batman, Lando. It's fantastic. A 3-hour story that feels focused on the Caped Crusader instead of his villains, which are still very present here. Pattinson kills it as a tormented Bruce Wayne. Tone overall reminded me of films like Zodiac and Seven. Some choices might upset fans. Ooh, I don't agree. Lando. I don't think the choices will upset fans. They certainly didn't upset me. Yes, Ronnie Dodge, I have seen. Mick, have you seen that Nightwing is in pre-production? Yes, on IMDb. They're not the greatest of sources. I hope it's true, my friend, because that guy deserves this movie, and I'd be so excited. John, IGN gave it 10 out of 10. Villager, who's the actor for Batwing? Blackwing, I don't know. Ben Pottimeyer, I've been hearing high praise from a lot of actors about Matt Reeves' vision and storytelling. I'm so excited. Great cast and vision, exactly. Villager, Nightwing, I don't know. We know who's playing Robin. Now, will this be the same actor for this Nightwing movie? Who knows? Anyway. Kate Erbland, one thing I really love about The Batman is that it speaks to a very specific element I'm constantly screaming about. The city of Gotham sucks so much. Yes, but we love Gotham. We love Gotham. We want it to suck, right? Man, this is from James Viscardi. Man, the Batman is a visceral experience, but a long one. Pattinson's Batman is going to quickly become a fan favorite, but his Bruce Wayne leaves a bit to be desired. Really? Really? Anyway, but man, oh man, does this movie look good. It drips with Frank Miller, Jeff Lower, Tim Sale, etc. Duane Miller, we go down as one of the best comic book films in a long time. The script, performances, set pieces, and visual storytelling was phenomenal. Robert Pattinson shines as an emotional, brooding Batman next to Paul Dano's terrifying Riddler, Matt Reeves' modern masterpiece. Brandon Davis of Comic Book, he's separated his tweets quite a lot. After seeing The Batman, I immediately wanted a sequel to be ready tomorrow. He also complained about the 3-hour runtime. This is a guy who wet himself over Endgame being 3 hours. Alex Ledbetter, The Batman thoughts, good but frustrating. Now, I'm not surprised coming from you, Alex. Looks and sounds incredible. Cast bar Dano lost themselves in roles. Bar Dano. Penguin car chase is a standout. Gotham feels fresh, even though not all new. Riddler's plans, yeesh. A 2.5 act story versus The Dark Knight's 4 acts. Similar to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I couldn't disagree with you more, Alex. Matt Reeves has made the definitive Batman film. This is from Matt Neglia. Think of Seven, but set in Gotham. Robert Pattinson's eyes are so intense and observant under the black cowl, while Michael Giacchino's score is a grand and haunting masterwork, an epic, dark, and thematically rich neo-noir. Ronnie Dodge, Walter Hamada is here to stay. Sorry, Snyder Cult, he's a producer on this movie. Ahmed Hikal, with Batman starting DC movies with a bang, hope the other fill the same gap or higher. Hashmin Hashlin, me. What if Joker's Gotham goes to reverse? Goes to reverse. Edward Bishop. This movie deserves an Oscar nomination. In technical aspects, it's crazy how visually good each scene looks, and the soundtrack is wonderful. This is the best Matt Reeves movie, and you can see the love he has for the character. Yeah, that stands out a mile. Stephen Waitrop, absolutely love Matt Reeves' LA the Batman. Reeves has crafted an amazing film that happens to star Batman. The filmmaking on display from all departments is brilliant. At Greg Fraser, DP cinematographer, Michael Giacchino score plus Jane Chinlund's production design is superb. Chris Tapley, I never thought I would see a Batman movie like The Batman, an actual detective story, methodically paced, dripping with atmosphere, modestly stylish, and it's sort of incredible to look at Greg Fraser, DP, and Matt Reeves have crafted an aesthetic at once evocative and unique. Brandon Davies again. Ronnie Dodge, I don't want to read Variety review as they will probably spoil who Barry Kogan is playing. I hope not. Brandon Davies, the Batman starts out intensely, letting you know it's pushing as close to an R rating that it can, while maintaining a PG-13. Matt Reeves sets the tone early to say this one is going to be gritty, intense, sometimes scary, with true horror elements injected, which is cool. Scott Menzel, the Batman is unlike any other Batman film before it. The plot is grounded in reality, even more so than Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. The Batman is more of a detective story rather than a superhero film. Well, he's not a superhero anyway, so he ain't got no powers. The cast is very good, with Colin Farrell and Paul Dano being the film's MVPs. Villager critics whining about runtimes, probably Marvel shills. Yeah, they are. Ronnie Dodge, the multiverse is here to stay for the DC universe. What a start for us DC fans, absolutely. Ahmed Hikal, can Matt Reeves make other DC characters shine, or only Batman? Because after the success of Batman, I want to test his ability with other DC characters, don't we all? EW, cinema of a spectacular order. The Batman's most artistically stunning CBM ever made. Matt Reeves wows with a sprawling detective tale, showcasing the magnificence of Greg Fraser, bathing Gotham in an amber glow. Robert Pattinson owns the brooding Batman. WB has a winner, 9.5. The Batman film news. The Batman is a definitive Batman movie. We've been waiting for a detective film noir with a splash of 90s grudge aesthetics. Matt Reeves delivers a gripping, complex narrative that forces you to pay attention. No one else but Robert Pattinson could have been this Batman. Brandon Davies again. The Batman is a visceral good movie. Matt Reeves mashes several Batman stories into a raw, real take for an epic detective noir, an impressive, lengthy, cinematic journey, brilliant visuals, repetitive revolving door of locations, tremendous music from Michael Giacchino. Binge watch this. The first reviews of The Batman, we are now live, and critics are calling it the best Batman film, exceptional, brilliant, and bold. Some are even saying that it is a game changer. It is. Ronnie Dodge, The Independent gave The Batman 5 stars, and they hate DC films usually. Wow, just wow. Ronnie Dodge, I'm so excited for Friday, man. I changed my seat to recliner because it's 3 hours. Wow. This is the Batman movie I have always wanted. A straight-up detective story full of twists and turns that didn't feel like 3 hours at all. Robert Pattinson is perfect for this version of Bruce Batman. I cannot wait to see more of this world Matt Reeves is building, and that's by Batman Shots. Film poser T.M. Gabriella. Matt Reeves' The Batman perfectly captures the frame masked vigilante. It showcases his strengths and vulnerabilities as well, making him more human than previous incarnations. Paul Dano shines as the Riddler. It is one of the best comic book adaptations ever made. Ahmed Hikau, I am now excited for the other DC movies. That's never changed for me. Brandon Davies again. Robert Pattinson is a good Batman with emotion that comes through the mask. It's his story, not Bruce Wayne's. Zoe Kravitz is a fantastic Catwoman, captivates each second she's given. Wish for her to get more. Colin Farrell is a madman for how great he is as the Penguin. DC World, the best Batman yet. DC World, and advertised on TV spots in cinemas from March the 4th. Boba Talks. Oh, it's Boba. John M. Turturro plays the role with such confidence and swagger in that when you see him in scenes, he really is this elusive crime boss that really feels as though he belongs in Gotham, pulling all of the strings in the criminal element. Diego and Dallas. Wow, The Batman is the best crafted Batman film of all time. Robert Pattinson is perfect for the role, and Matt Reeves' direction shines with all departments firing on all cylinders. A masterful technical achievement that becomes one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. Brandon Davies again. Ronnie Dodge, I understand why Matt said why they're in early talks for the sequel already. Yep. Ben Pottimeyer, love Boba, so do I. Yep, great. Ronnie Dodge, did you see Amazon's who was in Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 84 film scenes for The Flash? So we are probably going to see Themyscira. We absolutely are. Ahmed Hickel, but come to think of it, even before the movie was released, we all know that it's going to be fire, absolutely. So Brandon Davies again. The runtime did feel a bit long. Right, Brandon Davies, right, I like him, but he's an MCU shill. He was loving the fact that Endgame was going to be 3 hours, but he said it felt long. He does add, that said, my screening was delayed by 3 hours, so seeing the movie became a 6 hour outing, so I might have been feeling the time more. Griffin Schiller. Angry, hard-boiled, soaked in angst, the Batman finally marks the arrival of the world's greatest detective. A gripping and brilliant unraveling of fear and addiction. Matt Reeves flexes his extensive knowledge of film history to craft a noir love letter and a perfect Batman movie. Johnny Shosbach. Matt Reeves brings his vision to the Batman and delivers the best work of his career, an intense, riveting piece of big-budget filmmaking directed in a way that echoes everything from Seven to Chinatown, but also feels blindingly new. Brian Telecro, RobertAbert.com. Peter Canavas. While retaining the requisite elements of blockbuster action cinema, decidedly shifts the focus to pulp fiction. The Batman feels more like a Batman story than a Batman movie, and that's an achievement in itself. So they're the reactions on Twitter, but we are going to read out some lengthy reviews as well, because I think that's important to cover everything. Ben Pottimeyer, people binge watch seasons but can't watch a 3 hour movie. Come on. Was Titanic too long? Was Oliver Stone's JFK too long? Was the Snyder Cut too long? I can go on. Were the 10 Commandments too long? Listen, right? It's just a shitty critique. It's a shitty critique. It's a lazy critique, and I don't like it. Right, before I read these lengthy reviews, come in with your comments, because when I'm reading them, I'll probably miss a few comments, and you'll start saying, why didn't you read my comments out? Which I always want to read your comments out, by the way, because I'm very interested in what you've got to say. I am very hyped, as you can see. I'm very pumped. I expected the positive reactions. I expected a couple of nitpicks and things like that, but it's overwhelmingly great. Can someone in the comments keep on updating me with the tomato meter as well? Because I've only got one device. I've got my laptop and I've got this. So Ronnie Dodd, Ahmed, yeah. And also Gal filmed scenes for The Flash last July and August. That's correct. Ronnie Dodd, it's just nitpicking for the sake for it. Yeah. Listen, some people are going to do it. Some people are going to do this. It doesn't mean, I bet you in 78 they found some nonsense to say about Superman the movie. Even then, but we didn't have any social media. And plus I was only 5 years old. So anyway. Villager, is there a Catwoman and Batwoman? Right. Villager, I'm not interested in that nonsense. I don't want to talk about rubbish like that. Pac-Man, 96% Rotten Tomatoes rating right now. Right, keep me updated when it changes. Obviously, it's early days. With Rotten Tomatoes, it does go very high with these films. I don't know how it goes on as the film progresses. Ronnie Dodge, well, apparently I read Dylan O'Brien will be Robin in Batgirl, which will lead into his Nightwing movie, according to Scoopers. That is very exciting. And I'm going to cover that, Ronnie, and everyone else who's interested in Nightwing on tomorrow's DCEU Daily. Himara Keshing, majority on Twitter and YouTube give positive review for the Batman movie. Yep. Villager. Oh, yeah. You have a dirty mind, Villager. Villager, Dylan O'Brien would be perfect. He's huge on social media and has an amazing reputation. But doesn't this prove that Walter Hamada, in fact, knows what he's doing? To give this director, who has been gagging to do this film for over a decade now, you can't fight it. It's very, very exciting what's going on over at DC. Very exciting. And don't forget something else. The deal that Walter Hamada did with Netflix and Robert Downey Jr. to do that Sweet Tooth DC adaptation as well. There's a lot going on. And don't be surprised when the Snyderverse is restored if WB and Netflix work together on it. And it might end up over at Netflix. Might. Ahmed Hiko, is there Atlanteans in Flash too as Amazons? I would imagine so. Ronnie Dodge, how bad are the Snyder fans kicking off? Can I laugh, please? Well, I'm not on Twitter right now. I rushed my dinner down. I kind of retweeted lots of reactions so I could read them out to you guys. I have no interest in what they've got to say. My hype is so high, I just don't care. Himura Kenshin, I really hope Matt Reeves takes over Justice League from Zack Snyder. Matt Reeves isn't interested in doing that. Ben Pottimeyer, I always wanted Dylan as Jason Todd, but Grayson is cool. In Morto, will Matt Reeves keep the no-kill rule? This is what Mays Keaton and Affleck's extra special. Well, I mean, listen, I don't think that Keaton's Batman murdered in cold blood, did he? Ben Pottimeyer, I'm a Snyder fan. What's your point? Well, look, we've got to be very clear here, Ben. We're not talking about the pure-hearted. I'm a Snyderverse fan from the DCEU. We're not talking about all of them. We're talking about the ones who keep on saying, boycott WB! The negative people who come out with shitty, lying, hot takes. That's who we're talking about, Pottimeyer. If you've been following me for a long time, you know I love Zack's DC movies. Come on. Right, everyone. We are going to read these full articles now. So as I find them on my timeline. Ronnie Dodd, I just hope Dylan's announcement is soon, probably after the Batman is out. It could be sooner than that. So let's find. Right, let's go to Digital Spy, although they're notorious with pop-ups, but let's have a look. The Batman Review. Robert Pattinson excels in a brilliant new take on DC hero. It's been well worth the wait by Ian Sandwell. When it comes to a character as well as known as Batman, it's tough to do something that genuinely is different to what's come before. So when the likes of Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson were promising that the Batman would be something fresh and different, we took it with a pinch of salt because at the end of the day, this is still Batman. However, we are happy to be proved very wrong in this instance. Informato. He wasn't afraid to off somebody in if they need to be got rid of. Ronnie Dodge, Ben, not aimed at you, just the boycott people who I'm aiming at. Ahmed Hikal, flash, flash, flash. By avoiding the origin story and focusing on the world's greatest detective aspect, we're seeing a side of Batman that has never fully been explored on screen before. Throw in some heavy film noir vibes and a richly detailed Gotham underworld, and Reeves has delivered an exhilarating spin on the character. Inevitably, you'll be judging the Batman against other Batman films, but not only is it a match for the strongest of those outings, it's also up there with the best comic book movies overall. It's that good. And if that's all you need to know, then feel free to leave right now. If you want to know more, though, fear not. The following is totally spoiler-free. The Batman picks up after Bruce Wayne Robert Pattinson has had 2 years of nights as Batman, patrolling the streets of Gotham and striking fear into the hearts of criminals. However, it's not having the impact he expected. And things, if anything, are worse than ever. They're about to get a lot worse as sadistic killer Edward Nashton, Paul Dano, aka the Riddler, starts to target Gotham's elite. Helpfully, the Riddler also leaves cryptic clues for Batman, which sends him into the city's dark underworld, populated by the likes of Oswald Cobblepot, Colin Farrell, and Carmine Falcone, John Turturro. As the investigation starts to hit closer to home, can Batman uncover the Riddler's grand plan for Gotham before it's too late? That's really about all we want to go into, detail-wise, as Reeves really immerses you in Batman's world. Where other Batman movies would cut away to show the villains doing villainous things, you're with Batman every step of the way, as every clue is uncovered and riddles solved. There are times when Reeves does cut to other characters, such as in the chilling and unforgettable introduction of the Riddler. However, by mostly keeping you with Bats, it elevates the detective angle and adds an intrigue that keeps you gripped throughout the near 3-hour runtime. Dr. Assassin Zucker will be seeing it on Friday. From everything I'm seeing, it stays true to the adage, story above everything else. Spot on. The immersion extends to Batman himself. In his DC debut, Robert Pattinson spends the vast majority as the vigilante and not as Bruce Wayne. His take on Bruce is one obsessed with his alter ego, unaware of how his emotions are driving what he does and how that explodes in his brutal takedowns of any criminal that crosses his path. Spending so much time in the Batsuit makes it all the more challenging for Pattinson, who has to do a lot with just body language. He rises to the task, though, with an imposing performance, and you never doubt that this is a Batman who villains will genuinely fear. Any doubts you may have had won't last long. Let me go to this point. Sam Jan Reviews, I will be seeing the Batman on Saturday. Awesome. Because there's been some controversy, hasn't there, about the Mandalorian taking his helmet off and Boba Fett taking his helmet off. This is how you do it. The guy's got a mask on, right? But he can still convey his emotions. And it's about great storytellers, great directors. And this is the problem over at Disney. They don't have them. Pac-Man, Rotten Tomatoes rating now 91%. It is varying so much. Yeah, we'll see how it ends up. Very interesting. Why? I don't even know how anyone can give this a rotten score, but there you go. While it might be Pattinson's movie, it'll be wrong to single him out because a Batman movie needs two to tango. Paul Dano makes the Riddler as terrifying as he is magnetic, which is all the more impressive. As like Pattinson, he's largely hidden behind the costume. It's a performance every bit as good as Heath Ledger's in The Dark Knight, and it will haunt your nightmares. Dano gets the most substantial role of the supporting cast, but there are strong turns everywhere you look. Led by Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle. As with the other characters, she's not quite Catwoman yet, but neither is she a damsel in distress. Why would Selena Kyle be a damsel in distress? Why would you even mention that? The Neuer tone might suggest she doesn't get loads to do yet still. Makes an impression. Ben Pottimeyer, I heard Matt used a VR and had the scenes mapped out and was able to see the point of view he wanted. So cool, absolutely. Jeffrey Wright brings a welcome sense of dry humour to Lieutenant James Gordon, while the emotional heart of the movie largely comes from Andy Serkis' affecting take on Alfred, who knows what Bruce needs but can't deliver it. John Turturro is suitably sleazy as Carmine Falcone, but special mention has to go to Colin Farrell's entertaining and transformative role as Oswald Cobblepot. Yeah, Colin, sensational. Dr. Ashia Xhaka, on a lighter note, I'd love to cast you as Lex Luthor. Oh, yeah. My own version of the DCE. One needs a compelling person to play a complex character. Oh, I'd always wanted to play Lex since Rosenbaum's turn on Smallville. It would be amazing. But no one's ever beaten Rosenbaum. Never. He should be the DCEU's Lex Luthor. I have spoken. With all those notable Batman characters involved, you could fear Spider-Man 3 vibes. And we can't ignore that it's 3 hours long. However, by keeping the focus on Batman, Reeves, who wrote the script with Peter Craig, avoids making it feel overstuffed and constantly propel the plot along with a new reveal of big set pieces. This might be a very different Batman movie tonally and story-wise, but it still delivers the Bat goods you expect, such as the Batmobile, now a souped-up muscle car to fit the grounded tone. It gets its time to shine in a visceral car chase with cinematographer Greg Fraser, putting you right in the driving seat. It is sensational. Ronnie Dodge, what a year for Batman fans. This movie, we get this masterpiece, and then Michael Keaton returning Batgirl, and The Flash and Ben Affleck's farewell. Maybe his farewell. Dr. Zhigzaka, great thanks. Yes, he should. If he's busy, then you. Yeah, Michael's not busy. He's never too busy for Lex, but yeah, I'd love to do it, honestly. Ben Pottimeyer, so crazy. I feel like every actor has a standout role in this movie. Exactly. Batman might be a proper detective now, but he still gets to show off his fighting skills. Fraser's striking camera work lets you feel every bruising punch and gunshot, with editors William Hoy and Tyler Nelson each chewing quick cuts. The standout is a corridor fight where the only light comes from muzzle flashes, but you could truly pick any set piece to highlight the excellent craft behind the Batman. This extends to Michael Giacchino's magnificent score, which weaves in influence like Ave Marie and Nirvana's Something in the Way. There are the booming and ominous beats, especially in Batman's theme, but it's distinct from Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard's work on Christopher Nolan's trilogy. The level of detail and technical skill that has gone into creating this new version of Gotham City is why the runtime never becomes an issue. It's a world you're happy to luxuriate in, filled with fascinating characters that, although they're well known, feel different to what's come before. It's easy to get Batman wrong, but Reeves never even threatens to do so. The Batman is an enthralling, chilling, and fresh take on the iconic DC hero that'll leave you desperate for another visit to his impeccably crafted world. Brilliant review, brilliant, honest review, accurate, and I really enjoyed reading that. So the next one I'm going to do is The Hollywood Reporter. Robert Pattinson in the new Batman film review. Right, let's go to that. Let's see some of your messages. Derpy Gaming, IGN gave it a 10. Gave it a 10. Oh, good. Gave it a 10. Isn't that good? I'm confused. Get your comments in before I read the next full review. We're really taking this seriously, and we're looking at what these critics are saying. Very important. Right, I'm going to read this review. Robert Pattinson in The Batman Film Review. This is by David Rooney of The Hollywood Reporter. The Cape Crusader is back on Gotham City's crime-infested streets, exposing corruption at the highest levels in Matt Reeves' reboot. It's not a reboot. How many more times? Also featuring Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Colin Farrell. With his Planet of the Apes installments, Matt Reeves demonstrated that big studio franchise movies based on iconic screen properties didn't have to exclude intelligent, emotionally nuanced storytelling. The same applies to The Batman, a brooding genre piece in which the superhero trappings of Kate and Cal, Batmobile and cool gadgetry are folded into the grimy noir textures of an intractably plotted detective story, led with magnetic intensity and a granite jawline. By Robert Pattinson as a Dark Knight with daddy issues, this ambitious reboot, it's not a reboot, is grounded in a contemporary reality where institutional and political distrust breed unhinged vigilantism. More balanced in its bleak social realism than 2019's Joker, it's shaped by the perspective of not of a villain, but of a conflicted hero whose arc takes him from being an instrument of vengeance to a crime fighter who refuses to surrender his hope of making a difference despite the daunting odds against him. The Batman seems less likely to be dismissed as a nihilistic exploitation. It's a soulful nocturne of corruption and chaos, and as much as I long for a few more glimmers of humour, at no point during the hefty 3-hour runtime did my attention wander. But Reeves' film hammers home the realisation that somewhere along the line, someone, probably Christopher Nolan, decided that Batman movies should no longer be fun. Well, I don't know. Is a serious tone not fun? Are there not little funny elements there? There are. But, you know, it's up to your perspective. If you want fun Batman, go to 66 Batman. If you want fun Batman, go to Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. This was never going to be that. That's fun in the sense of amusement. Don't get me wrong. There's excitement and thrills, notably in an electrifying chase on a bridge in which the Batmobile withstands explosions and fire like an armor-plated muscle car. There's also plenty of sexual tension in the dangerous allure between Pattinson's Batman and Zoe Kravitz, Selena Kyle. A slinky creature of the night with a rocking rubber fetish wardrobe, formidable kickboxing moves, and a payback agenda that plants her on the path to becoming Catwoman. What there isn't much of is laughs, unless you count the sick sense of humour of Edward Nashton and Paul Dano, the alienated geek accountant better known as the Riddler. Hikari, yo, I'm late since I've been looking for all the Batman reviews for an hour. You should have just come on here. I've read all the briefs on Twitter and I'm reading the full reviews now, my friend. You have to go back and rewatch the video later if you want. Dr. Sig Zucker, when Earth 2's DCEU casts Superman, who would you like to see him play? An unknown, an unknown, an unknown. Superman must always be played by an unknown. For those of us who grew up on endless returns of the 1960s Batman TV series with its campy parade of guest villains and its cartoonish one-buff kapow fight scenes, there was a natural progression in Tim Burton's studio reinventions of the enduring DC property. In particular, his 1992 entry, Batman Returns, is a favourite for many of us, thanks in large part to the lip-smacking turns of Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, destined, with no disrespect to Kravitz, who's terrific, to remain unequalled. Yeah, the Pfeiffer performance as Selena, it is something special, there's no question about that. The dour self-seriousness that crept into screen treatment starting in 2005 with Nolan's Batman Begins is probably true to the original DC Comics vision of creators Bob Kane and Bill Finger. You haven't read a comic, have you? You're really saying, I love Batman Begins and the Dark Knight trilogy, but there's no way that Nolan's take on Batman is more accurate to Bob Kane and Bill Finger's vision than what Matt Reeves has done. You are so wrong. And to the 1986 rejuvenation by Frank Miller, But as compelling as the Nolan and now Reeves takes on the material art, all that gravitas can become, well, heavy. I think you should just watch sitcoms or Marvel movies, my friend. Ronnie Dodge, British actors end up being really good Batmans. What's it with us Brits? Mick? Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Rob Pattinson, and we've also had Christian Bale. And you could argue that Christian and Rob probably gave a better turn than Ben Affleck, just my opinion. I found myself even thinking wistfully of the truly terrible Joel Schumacher 90s entries, gaudy trash that at least could be relied upon to give you a glitzy Gotham City shining or spark-heated debate about the appropriateness of nipples on a bat suit. You really wanted that type of movie? Even when Pattinson sheds that back drag to make a rare public appearance as the reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne, he still looks like a sweaty refugee from a 90s grunge band. That association seems intended given that we hear Kurt Cobain's whispered vocals on the Isolation anthem, something in the way early, or maybe jettisoningly playboy glamour and embracing existential angst is now the only way to go, given the state of the world. No, I think it's a great take on Bruce Wayne. Doesn't matter what state the world's in. Reeves delivers a lot of movie. Does it stretch the definition of escapism to immerse ourselves in a fiction so reflective of the toxic cynicism that pervades our 21st century reality? Perhaps, but this glowing study in crime and punishment is meticulously crafted, vividly inhabited storytelling with a coherent thought through vision, and that makes for muscular entertainment. Reeves and co-writer Peter Cray make the smart decision not to rehash your origin story for the umpteenth time or continue with the DC Extended Universe explored by Zack Snyder. This is a strictly solo show, and for once, Batman is a more psychologically compelling character than his nemesis. He even moves differently as he materializes out of the shadows, slow, purposeful like a pallbearer without a coffin, his footsteps thudding like doom itself. Yeah, Rob has spoken about that in interviews, hasn't he? The action starts more than a year after he began stalking the Gotham streets. As a pulverizing felons, the bat signal is already in use in the night sky to call for his assistance. But Batman remains a fearsome enigma in a city falling apart after 2 decades of violent crime. His sole law enforcement ally is the future Commissioner Gordon Jeffrey Wright, at this stage still a lieutenant in a police force rife with corruption. The arresting opening unfolds to Ave Marie with an unseen figure watching through binoculars as the young son and wife of Mayor Don Mitchell Jr., Rupert Penry Jones, step out on Halloween night while he stays behind, glued to news coverage of the tight election race in which he's up against progressive candidate Bella Real, James Lawson. An intruder in the room in a combat mask and an Arnie surplus gear dispatches the mayor with a blunt instrument. When police arrive at the scene, they find the dead politician with his face wrapped in duct tape scrawled with the words, "No more lies." A note attached to the corpse addressed to the Batman identifies the killer as the Riddler, providing a cryptic clue to future assassinations, the grisliest of them lifted directly from Orwell's 1984. Ronnie Dodge, Mick, can you say something in the way is in the movie? Yes. Dr. Aisling Zaka, the only dependence on money being for his gadgets. The meaningful glance exchanged at the first crime scene between Batman and the mayor's son, Archie Barnes, evokes painful history. Given that Bruce Wayne lost his parents at a similar age, but the integrity of his father, Thomas Wayne, Luke Roberts, is called into question. Later in the movie, as the Riddler reveals ties to the past that explains his obsession with the Batman, he decrees that it's retribution time for the sins of the fathers. Ronnie Dodge, listening to Highway to the Anger Zone gives me Terminator vibes. Yeah, me too. Dr. Isaiah Zaka, urban corruption is always the theme with Gotham. In a real world, how much can we see Batman as a critique of capitalism and its perils, even though he's leaving the shadows of his... Yes, well, this is the thing with capitalism. You can turn capitalism against the capitalists. And that's what Batman does. He's thrived from what his parents had, but he's using it for good. And that's an interesting take, isn't it? The murderer directs Batman and L.T. Gordon to the mayor's mistress, Anika Hanahitsi, a drinks waitress at the Iceberg Lounge, that the nightclub and drug distribution hub is owned by mob boss Carmine Falcone, John Turturro, and run by his sleazy stooge, Oz, and unrecognisable Colin Farrell. In countless pounds of latex, he will go on to become the Penguin. Gotham's rich and powerful meet there in a VIP club within the club called 44 Below. It's there that Batman first encounters Selina, who has her own father issues and her own score to settle. The plotting is less invested in following the standard superhero model than in spinning a detective yarn, pumping up intrigue about the identity of a stool pigeon instrumental in taking down Falcone's chief underworld rival, while raising questions about the misuse of 1 billion city renewal, fund endorsed by Thomas Wayne. The script panders a little at times, like when Selina sounds off about white privilege assholes. Yeah, but here's the thing. Yeah, that's what we got in Hollywood today. You're going to hear that. You're going to get that in these films, because all these directors and all these people who make these films, I'm afraid, all come from the same political cloth, and they think that's a good idea. Now, personally, I just waved it away because it's a great movie and I want to be positive about DC, but there's no avoiding stuff like that in the day and age that we live in. But the deep dive into institutional corruption feels timely yet still organic to the source, and the father themes play into the loss of faith in elected officials. Likewise, the Riddler's manipulation of online conspiracy theorists to build a fanatical following to help execute his fiendish plan to bring Gotham to its knees. There's something else. The extreme left really don't like so-called conspiracy theorists. Now, conspiracy theorist is pretty much someone who thinks outside the box and brings out ideas that's against the extreme left narrative. So the extreme left are not anarchists. They believe in the system. Now, they say they don't believe in capitalism, but they exploit capitalism as well and live very comfortable within it. So the extreme left are hypocrites. And by mocking, this is what they do in their films. Nothing against Matt Reeves. I love him. Great movie. But this is what they do. And you can't say you hate capitalism when you profit from it. Warner Brothers profit from capitalism, right? Their film talks against capitalism. Matt Reeves is trying to say something against capitalism in this film. But he's probably a millionaire, a billionaire director, right? And he profits and he lives very comfortably. If you don't believe in capitalism, then why don't you shed all your money and live on the streets? You're not going to do that. And that's the problem with the extreme left and extreme left Hollywood. They're very hypocritical. Ronnie Dodge, does the Batman have funny moments like between Gordon and Bruce? I wouldn't say laugh out loud moments, but there is a bit of banter there. Scott Edwards, what's up? Hello, Scott. Village, difference between conspiracy theories and anti-science. Well, I hear this word anti-science. I have my 3 jabs. I wear my mask, right? But scientists can't even agree about the best way to go forward about the pandemic, right? I don't trust anyone, right? You know, we're not there with a Bunsen burner on a petri dish. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know science. We don't know what's wrong. We don't know who started this virus, right? Trump could have literally sent someone out to China, right, to leak it over there. And that's why the Chinese leaked it over the West. We don't know. That's the thing. So it's all very well. I believe that the virus is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, this anti-science thing, basically just saying anti-science. But the thing is, the extreme left love to talk about conspiracy theorists, right? In the 1960s, when Kennedy was shot, right, and everyone was saying it wasn't the magic bullet, they were conspiracy theorists, right? All those years, people was talking about aliens and things like that. A few years or 6 months ago, the White House was saying that aliens are out there, right? And they've got forms and, memorandums about it now, right? People say Princess Diana wasn't murdered, and if you say she's murdered, you're a conspiracy theorist. Be very careful by calling people, the extreme left call people conspiracy theorists to try and make them sound mad so you don't listen to them. It's very, very important that you use your brains in life, because the extreme left are no better than the extreme right. The extreme left hate men, white people, right, even though most of them are white, right? And the extreme right hate everyone else. So they're both as bad as each other. Neither political side is a good future or on the side of the angels. That's my opinion. Villager, we have no choice but to live under capitalism, no matter if you're a Republican or a liberal. Well, that's the point. Liberals do live under capitalism, and a lot of them live quite comfortably. Why don't they shed capitalism? Right? If they don't believe in it, practice what you preach. It's like when they say it's all men. Well, all those women who say it's all men, why don't they divorce their brothers? Why don't they divorce their husbands, boyfriends? Why don't they boycott their fathers and their brothers? That's the problem with the world we live in today. If you're going to shout out a narrative, right, it's not good just shouting it out, practice what you preach. And this is why all these people are full of shit. Scott Edwards, what would you give the Batman out of 10? 10. Ronnie Dodd, guess who gave the Batman a negative review? Scott Mendelson. Oh my God, Mr. Facts and Figures himself. I don't even listen to him. Scott Edwards, do you like Killer Frost on The Flash? Kind of. Harris Selling, liberals cry about capitalism while tweeting on their iPhones. Exactly. Now, I'm mid-left. I'm middle left, right? But, they're hypocrites. John, do you think the Batman should get an Oscar? Definitely. Hikari, someone named Evan Doozy gave a rotten score for the Batman, lol, and he gave a better rating for Chainsaw Massacre. What, the reboot? That's terrible. Let me just switch my heater off. I'm getting hot. Woo! Right, let's go to work now. So where are we? So let's continue on this Hollywood Reporter, the Batman review, which feels all too real. Reeves is savvy about tapping into the anger festering in the aggrieved margins of contemporary America, and Dano makes a credibly creepy instigator for that flock of insurgents. A seething incel with smarts and tech skills to wreak havoc. That the Riddler's charges of corruption are legitimate doesn't make him any less evil. Well, it depends what you think is evil. This is what the extreme left believe as well. That men like Ed Nashton are the problem, right? That they should never be forgiven and they should never have excuses for what they do. But they come from somewhere, and this is the problem. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that anyone in Hollywood would ever make a Batman film, and instead of having the Riddler being the Riddler in this movie, hey, let's just say Selena Kyle is the one doing the stuff that Ed Nashton is doing? Do you think you would ever get a female character written like that? No, because the extreme left believe women are the answer to the world's prayers and that no woman does anything bad, right? This is their crazy belief. So I love Matt Reeves. I love DC, but they've all got the same agenda, and that's the problem. All the 21st century technology employed sits surprisingly well on a narrative framework right out of the classic Noir playbook. As Reeves showed particularly in War of the Planet of the Apes, the director is skilled at shifting between genre, which allows the final act to move fluidly into disaster movie action, with large-scale destruction challenging the resolve not only of Batman, but of the political light on the dark horizon. For all its grandiose seriousness about the threat to lawful democracy, however, it's the intimate moments of the film that resonate the most. The interludes between Batman and Selena go beyond wary mutual attraction to explore both the intersections and the divergences in their respective ideas of justice. Even their motorcycles seem connected, and the surrogate father role of Bruce Wayne's loyal butler and chief advisor, Alfred Andy Serkis, is conveyed in a moving hospital scene after the latter is injured in an attack. Ooh, that's a bit of a spoiler, isn't it? Hardcore Bat fans might feel slightly cheated that celebrated arch-villains Catwoman and the Penguin are represented only in their embryonic stages. But in the case of Kravitz hardened by unquestionably human Selina, especially the attention to character is rewarding. Love the pixie cut and the white claw manicure to Farrell's presumably will have more to do in the coming installments, when there's less standing in the way of Oz's hunger for power. Another unmistakable superstar from Batman's Hall of Infamy is introduced in the Shadow cameo. Hang on. This might be spoilery. I've got to be careful here. Another unmistakable superstar from Batman's Hall of Infamy is introduced in a shadowy cameo near the end, indicating a major role in the next movie. So they basically spoil it, haven't they? I think we all know what they're talking about. You shouldn't have even said nothing, mate. I mean, I've got the biggest gob in the world. I can't keep nothing to myself, and I haven't spilled this. That's outrageous. Zach, how long was the Penguin chase, if you had to guess? It's pretty lengthy, actually. Villager, I'm a left, but I do agree about Ed Nashton. A movie where the female character is as evil as Ed would never be made. It would never be made because these people are crazy. It's propaganda. I mean, Hollywood have always felt this way, but they haven't been as blatant in their narrative of pushing their agenda. Henrik, yes, I made it. Yes, you did. Ronnie Dodge, I love it. We get Robert's Batman for today, and having Michael Keaton back in the DC world is just amazing. Isn't it just? Where are we? Henrik, give me the reviews, baby. Right, I've been doing loads of reviews. I'm reading the Hollywood Reporter one. If you've missed the bit, so you'll have to replay the video if you've got time. Ronnie Dodge, Barry Coogan. Yeah, look, he just gave away a major spoiler. I mean, look, it's something that leaked out for a while, which I'm not happy about either, by the way. But yeah, it's not something I would have mentioned personally. I think it's out of order. Ben Pottimeyer, why is the critic detailing and summarising the movie by scenes, telling too much? Exactly. The biggest dividends of Reeves' approach to go to the Batman Bruce himself, with Pattinson playing him as a sorrowful, almost desperate man, indifferent to his astronomical wealth, and fully aware that he can do only so much to reverse the course of a society rotten to its core. All that makes his moral and physical resilience in the climactic action more stirring. It's also refreshing to see a Batman who doesn't just walk away unharmed from every scrape, but actually takes the knocks and feels to the hurt. Wow! I was watching The Dark Knight Rises, and Bruce Wayne was pretty injured in that film, and we saw him struggle with those injuries, so I don't think that's right. Even showing a humanizing moment of fear as he activates his wingsuit and prepares to leap off the roof of Gotham Police headquarters. Pattinson is riveting throughout. On the heels of Greg Fraser's spectacular work on June, the cinematographer gives the film a moody, timbrous look to match the tortured pit of Batman's soul, and production designer James Chinlan's world building is first rate, weaving together elements from real cities and sets to form a Gotham that resembles New York while establishing its own gritty Gothic identity, pulsing with menace and mystery. Visceral use of sound is key to the film's immersive effect, unlike my videos, but even more so, an absolute banger of a score by Michael Giacchino. The symbolic underlay might have seemed excessive in less confident hands, but the graceful incorporation of specific themes for Batman and Selina, as well as pre-existing music ranging from classical pieces to Nirvana, provides tonal variation to ensure that the Batman never becomes a punishing downer. But you know what? You may see things like that as a punishing downer, but this is what people have been excited about for years to see from Matt Reeves. So that's his review. So I'll just cue up the next one, and this is from the Wrap. But we'll take a breath. No, it was Ronnie Dodge. Was the article Variety? Not surprising they did it with No Way Home. No, it was the Hollywood Reporter. Yeah, a total bitch arsehole move, because we kind of, listen, even though they're hinting to it being a certain villain, if you watch the film, it may be another villain. Let's put it that way. It may be another one that's been played before in a Batman film, right? And one that we saw in The Dark Knight might be someone like that. It's very, I mean, it probably is who we think it is, but we will see. We will see. And it's interesting, isn't it? How Nolan teased the same character in his first film with the card, and they've done it in another way. So it always goes back to that character. And I'll tell you why it always goes back to that character, because he puts butts in seats and people love him as much as they love Batman. John, what are your thoughts on Gal Gadot being cast as the evil queen in Snow White live-action movie? Well, look, it's just funny. I love Gal as Wonder Woman, but she's just taking anything that's offered to her. So I'm not very interested. It's pretty obvious why they did it. But I'm not even interested in that Snow White movie because we know what Disney are going to do with it. Look, the only Snow White thing I'm interested in watching is the original animated classic. And that's the thing with me. I don't sit here moaning about, so-called woke culture. If they do something I'm not interested in and I know what their propaganda is, I just don't give them the money. That's the best way to hurt them. Ben Pottimeyer, stop. Why should I stop? Never going to stop, mate. The Batman film review, Robert Pattinson brings complex humanity to an even darker night. Oh, you want me to stop giving you clues, right? Nothing confers seriousness in a superhero movie more effectively than a protracted running time. Just ask Zack Snyder, whose DC Comics adaptations have each run longer than previous one. At 176 minutes, the Batman admittedly falls short of Snyder's kitchen sink cut of Justice League, but by more than an hour. A half dozen needle drops and too many slow motion shots to count. No, you're talking shit. Nevertheless, Matt Reeves' franchise Kickstarter feels like the ultimate extension of this borderline self-parodying, if admittedly very successful, impulse to take characters in silly costumes and treat them with pro-faced, almost oppressive solemnity. Hang on, mate. Can I say something? Superhero costumes are not silly. Let's look at what you fucking wear, right? Ronnie Dodge, I wonder when we will get the Black Adam trailer. Hopefully soon. Once the Batman goes into cinemas, I predict. What's more impressive than what Reeves has done, which even at its most superficial is essentially and very effectively to remake Seven with Robert Pattinson as the jaded William Somerset to Jeffrey Wright's increasingly disillusioned David Mills, is the fact that he crafts the Fincher film's unimaginable atrocities onto a Cape Crusader adventure for a purpose thankfully more meaningful than taking funny book characters seriously for the fast buck. In The Batman, Reeves shepherds his vigilante hero closer to the edge of annihilation than moviegoers have ever seen before, so that Batman as a character and a franchise can start anew as a beacon of justice without forever being overshadowed by the cliched bleakness of its overplayed origin story. That said, at almost 3 hours, it takes a while to get to that glimmer of hope. But a movie shouldn't just be hopeful. You want the hope to be there, but you've got to build something, right? You've got to build an evolution before you create a revolution. Don't you understand that? Ronnie Dodge, got to go, mate. Take care. What a day for DC fans. Bring on the multiverse. Thank you for watching and joining us, Ronnie. Hit a like on the way out if you haven't done so already, if you want. And where am I? In The Batman, Reeves shepherds his vigilante hero closer to the edge of annihilation than moviegoers have ever seen before. Blah, blah, blah. Is at least... Where was I? Hang on. Bleakness of its overplayed origin story. Instead, that almost 3 hours it takes a while to get to the glimmer of hope. But with Pattinson glowering beneath his cowl, Reeves creates a Batman whose psychology is at least as interesting as his crime-fighting activities for the first time in a long time. At the start of the film, Bruce Wayne has been dressing up as Batman for 2 years, cultivating an atmosphere of dread among Gotham City's ne'er-do-wells. Even in his absence, as much as he's actually been fighting crime, except for Lieutenant James Gordon Wright, with whom he regularly collaborates on cases, Batman's relationship with the GCPD is chilly at best. when the vigilante uncovers key information about a string of grisly murders by a seemingly politically motivated serial killer who calls himself Riddler, Paul Dano. Gordon's superiors reluctantly give him a wide berth to investigate the case. The disappearance of a young woman spotted with Riddler's latest victim leads Batman to a nightclub owned by a mid-level mobster, Oswald Cobblepot Colin Farrell, that fronts as a hangout for Gotham's movers and shakers, both bad and good, where he meets Selena Kyle, Zoe Kravitz, a cab burglar with mysterious ties to local crime lord Carmine Falcone, John Turturro. Harris Selick, do you think we'll see characters with superpowers in the future movies? Who knows? Maybe. I don't know about that. I'm not sure yet. But anything's possible. I don't think so, considering he said he'd introduce Superman to this world as long as he was the only superpowered being. So he would be the only superpowered being. As Riddler continues to target the city's politicians and supposed moral leaders, Batman and Gordon soon discover that each of his victims are connected to a famous indictment in Gotham's history. That was meant to eradicate crime, but didn't. Even worse, it has ties to Bruce's late father, a moral campaign racing to apprehend Riddler before he kills again. Batman plunges deeper and deeper into the investigation, only to uncover some shocking details about the Wayne family history. This is going to get a bit spoilery. Leave if you don't want to be spoiled. This unearthing of the past leaves him in a decision of whether it's worth it to maintain the secrecy of his heroic alter ego, if it means covering up the connections between him, his parents, and the corruption that has metastasized in Gotham City streets. Henrik, the end voice is a shadowy person saying, "Oh, hi." Calling the Batman a remake of Seven isn't entirely accurate. It's more like Reeves created two different versions of John Doe, one pursuing the other, with Gordon in the middle trying to make sense of not one, but two obsessive maniacs. Thankfully, the director of the last two extraordinary Planet of the Apes sequels is like his heroes, intrigued by the moral lines that people draw to shape their behavior and grey areas that surround those lines between justification and rationalization. It's interesting, though, isn't it, when we talk about someone writing about corruption and people doing bad things, it would say that that person analysing this stuff, the director, has never done a bad thing. The thing is, we're all flawed, aren't we? None of us are perfect. And just because you write a film, it doesn't mean, you know, you're better than the people doing these things. And I always find I find Hollywood and the entertainment industry very ironic. They act like, you know, their shit don't stink, when ultimately all our shit stinks, doesn't it? As we well know. Batman describes himself only as vengeance, and after 2 years, he's even spooked himself, disavowed of a genuine belief that things will actually improve, or that even a law-abiding crusader like mayoral candidate Bella Rail, James Lawson, can make a real difference. He settles for a status quo where he's the most menacing figure in the landscape, overrun by them. At the same time, Bruce Wayne has become so self-destructive that he's eager to believe the most horrible information about his family, no matter from what source it comes. Pattinson conveys a fascinating fragility behind the facade of his impenetrable armor that leads Bruce Wayne into even unhappier places than the ones he started in. And that journey makes a shift that's poignantly different from previous incarnations of the character, if only because it actually gives him somewhere to go when they inevitably make a couple of sequels. For all his psychological trappings, Batman ultimately has been a pretty one-dimensional, gloomy Gus on screen. Has he? And I don't mean to damn the film with faint praise by celebrating the fact that here he actually gets a character arc, one that makes you root for him as a person and not just a hero. One of the things you'll see from these modern-day critics, and fans actually, they'll actually, you know, compare one thing to the other. You shouldn't be comparing this Batman to other Batmans. They did what they did in those other films because they wanted to do them. You can't then say, oh, well, it's better than this because they didn't do that. They didn't do it because they didn't want to do it. They had a different vision. And that's okay. It doesn't make them wrong. And it doesn't make the Batman right or wrong. Do you get me? The movie showcases that vulnerability in a number of different ways. Some are physical after triumphantly escaping from a precinct full of angry cops with a dive off of the roof. He crash lands violently when his parachute gets caught beneath an overpass, while others are more subtly verbal in act of super contrition. he actually apologizes. Right, this is getting spoilery, by the way. So if you don't want to hear any more, because I do want to read the full thing, you have to leave. But that emotional demonstrality, whatever that word is, gets drawn out more vividly in Bruce Batman's relationship with others, starting, of course, with James Gordon and with Alfred Andy Serkis, his lovingly hectoring butler/father figure, but especially with Selina, who Kravitz brings to the screen with a resourcefulness and pragmatism that generally underscores how silly all of his gadget-driven theatricality is. Is it silly? I don't think it's silly. I'd love his gadgets, but there you go. It's up to you, Selina, isn't it? The sexual chemistry that the two characters share is the most palpable between Batman and Catwoman since Michael Keaton and Michelle Pfeiffer. The latter of whom Kravitz offers a skillful nod to with her ambiguous patent leather boots. Selina's take on heroism is predicated on necessity rather than privilege. And that contrast shines on board when they mention privilege. And that contrast shines a harsh light upon the motivations of the silver-spooned Avenger that again nudges the character's mythology into more contemporary and consequently more relatable context. But just because you're born with you don't ask to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth, do you? Right? Let's remember that. It's not his fault, right? But this is what the extreme left don't get because they're nuts. That's the thing. One wonders if some of the day one views of the film, the comic book fans who swarm and try to destroy dissenting opinions about their favourite properties, will notice how, right, now he's swiping at the people who exist, who give him a job, right? This is funny, right? Let's carry on. We'll notice how brutally it indicts their self-righteous armchair bully perspective via Riddler's plot to exact justice on the people he perceives have slighted him, even existentially. But you see, this guy, whoever's wrote this review, obviously has a bad relationship with people on Twitter, but it's actually critics who try and damp down what people think. And maybe if you, and I don't know you, but maybe you've done something, you actually did something to upset those people, to incite their anger. Think about that for a minute. The Riddler is someone who's trying to solve a problem, trying to clean up a corrupt place. He's doing it the wrong way, but you've actually simplified what's going on in this film. And again, that's typical of the extreme left. Via Riddler's, it's the same narrative we had when people didn't like The Last Jedi. You're this, you're that. At the end of the day, it's an unintelligent analysis. You're trying to say a guy who's been brought up, and now, who's lived his whole life in a brutal city, a corrupt city, is the same as an armchair movie fan who disagrees with other people's opinions. I mean, come on. Now, you've got to be nuts to think that. But then again, it's also an indictment of Batman's extrajudicial heroism that thankfully does not try to exonerate him except through Bruce Wayne's emotional journey, nor does it settle upon bland advocacy of police institutions as the most viable alternative. Yeah, this guy is as extreme left as you can get. He hates the police. He hates Bruce Wayne, probably because he's a white man, right? And he shouldn't be doing what he's doing. This is definitely not a Batman fan. You can tell that. Reeves rings out every available ounce of philosophical nuance from this story and its characters while also managing to deliver some absolutely fantastic action sequences. The best of these is undoubtedly the Batmobile's pursuit of Cobblepot through a torrential downpour that actually ups the ante on Christopher Nolan's use of 18-wheelers in The Dark Knight. Cinematographer Greg Fraser, 2021's Dune, may actually be the collaborator who deserves the lion's share of the credit for these sequences, bathing the film in an inky blackness like a latter-day Gordon Willis in a way that obviously suits the material's bleakness, but also makes for some astonishingly beautiful imagery when it's punctured by light. His ability both to obscure the thudding brutality of Batman's attacks and to dapple the frame with flashes of white or red to keep viewers oriented is genuinely remarkable achievement. Scott Edwards, do you think they will build a Justice League on Earth too? Unlikely, Scott. Meanwhile, though, the music owes at least a subsequent debt to the unsettling ambience of Howard Shore's work in Seven. Michael Giacchino's theme for the title character cooks John Williams' Imperial March down to its most menacing elements and then cranks up the volume to ear-splitting canvas levels, making the audience feel like they're watching the film from an inside stand-up bass whose strings are being manipulated with a large blunt instrument. Whether out of commercial fealty to the corporate overlords bankrolling the franchise or his own creative foreshadowing, Reeves also peppers in a handful of hints that there are future battles that this Batman will at least have the opportunity to fight. But where this movie functions best are in the scenes and sequences where it's simple a character study about a person who's determined to do what he thinks is right while trying to figure out whether or not he's actually making any difference. Of course, that's also a notion that Nolan explored in Batman Begins, but he didn't explore it as thoroughly as Matt Reeves did here. Again, that's not a criticism of what Chris did, because I adore Batman Begins. Another film whose rhythms this one more than vaguely resembles, but ultimately Reeves' film offers the right take on the character at the right moment. One that's not completely new or iconlastic to audiences, but different enough that they don't feel like they're watching the same back channel all over again. So yes, the Batman is absolutely too long. Now, I didn't like this guy before. Now, I definitely don't like him. But it's your opinion, yeah. You don't want an armchair fan going at you now, do you, anyway? Too long. And it has more than enough self-seriousness to match. But Reeves takes an unusual risk in the era of endless mythologies and cinematic universe by telling a story that actually could be complete, even if it's also obviously meant to be the beginning of a larger narrative. If intellectual properties exist precisely because people become compelled to invest themselves over and over in the journey of these characters, then the Batman not only delivers the goods, it also embodies many of the reasons why the investment can feel so rewarding. So, yeah, I didn't like that reviewer, but of course, I don't want to be accused of being an armchair fan. We've got an Empire review coming up next. So hit me with questions before we go to that Empire review. So what's the time now? So I'm probably going to spend another, what should we say, 30, 35 minutes on this live. I want to get through most of the reviews that I've saved up to read, because that's why I'm doing this, because we've been waiting for this all day, and that's what I wanted to do. Amesh Charkadra, sorry about killing your name. Hello, Amesh. Talk to me. I'll give you 5 minutes to talk to me before I start reading this article. There's 6 of you in the chat. I'm not very popular around here, am I? Never mind. I'll talk to myself. It is absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. I do actually like talking to myself. Should I have admitted that? Oh, more have left. Oh, no. Amesh Chakanda, will we get surprised regarding Barry Cohen? Amesh, without spoiler, I wanted to get excited. Well, I can't talk to you about Barry Keoghan if you don't want spoilers. So I wasn't going to say anything about him anyway. You need to watch this film and experience it for yourself. 7 likes. I've done all this work and all I've got is 7 likes. I tell you what. I don't know why I bother. Oh my God. Four people. Wow. It's all right. I'm sure I'll get some loyal people rewatching this video anyway, because it is very, very interesting. And it's the best way to do this on a live. Because if I did this, literally, if I did this on a pre-record, I'd be there for hours. Dr. Nishsak, we need likes in case. Thank you. A couple more likes. Thank you very much. So shall we read the Batman review by Empire? They've given it 4 stars. Anyway, Bruce Wayne Robert Pattinson is only 2 years into his tenure as the masked vigilante known as the Batman, when a serial killer who calls himself the Riddler, Paul Dano, begins targeting high-profile figures in Gotham City. With the help of Lieutenant Gordon, Jeffrey Wright, cat burglar Selena Kyle, Zoe Kravitz, Bruce must unravel the clues and stop a terrorist attack while wrestling with his family's legacy. This is by John Nugent. Batman has become bat-ambiguous. Gotham's protector is rarely far away from the screen this year alone. there is the return of Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, the cinematic debut of Batgirl, and the animated DC League of Super Pets, which features Ace, the Bat Hound, Batman's pet dog. He's everywhere, and Ben Affleck reprises the role in The Flash. The challenge for the Batman's writer-director, Matt Reeves, how to make a totemic mythic figure of pop, a cultural feel. Reeves' approach, it seems, evolution rather than revolution. Comparisons with Christopher Nolan's era-defining Batman trilogy are unavoidable. It shares Nolan's serious noirish tone, and one set piece is reminiscent of The Dark Knight. Is it? But the difference to say, Batman Begins, that there is empathetically not an origin story. There is a gratifyingly no new recreation of Bruce Wayne's parents being murdered, like Spider-Man Homecoming. This is post-origins a superhero still. His early years grappling with youthful naivety and what his masked identity actually means. I think it's interesting, how everyone's so hateful of seeing the origin story again. I don't mind seeing the parents thing. I don't actually mind it at all, because I think it's so important to the Batman character. But you hear this, the Wayne's murder again. Oh, shut up. Working with his cinematographer, Greg Fraser, Reeves has rendered perhaps the best screen realization of Gotham so far. So in Robert Pattinson, we get a very different Bruce Wayne, where Christian Bale and Ben Affleck embrace the macho side of the character. Oh, how dare they? Pattinson looks like a boyish vampire, his skin tone only a shade warmer than in Twilight. His is the first screen Batman to be fully seen wearing the eyeshadow required to the character's costume, which evokes Robert Smith from The Cure. In the suit, he's methodically and muscular out of it. He's racked with insecurity and self-doubt. A repeated needle drop in Nirvana, Something in the Way, confirms it. This is Immobats. As a new direction, it makes total sense for the most brooding of superheroes, and though the humorlessness sometimes flirts with self-parody, no it doesn't, Pattinson's narration, delivered like Ron's Nash Journal, grumbles mainly about vengeance, fear, justice, and the usual stuff. Which of course you wouldn't expect in a Batman movie, would you? The mood is justified by a believably dark bad guy in a crowded rogues gallery, shouts out to Zoe Kravitz, instantly charismatic Catwoman, and Colin Farrell's bafflingly convincing prosthetic Penguin. This is the Riddler's show, anchored by a chilling Paul Dano. Performance, he's business-sized terrorist of the Trump era. Oh, God. They're all mad, aren't they? Trump hasn't been president for 2 years now. Why are they still going on about him? Driven by, and listen, they love the word incel. But you know when they say incel, they mean an ordinary bloke, right? Right? That's what they mean. They hate us. They're nuts, mate. Anyway, driven by an incel's misplaced sense of injustice and a love of fiendish puzzles and a latte format. That's not the character. Did you actually see this film? Do you see what these characters' motivation are? This is what they say. They're called the Joker, an incel. That is the extreme left's go-to word. Incel. Anyway, fully embracing the world's greatest detective comics reputation that cinematic Batman often forget, Reeves thus plays things out like a twisty David Fincher-esque thriller. Some of the Riddler's clues could have been ripped from the pages of The Zodiac Killer. Occasionally, the knottiness of the plotting will leave you feeling that near 3-hour runtime. No, it doesn't, but it is never boring. The narrative propelled by a series of grisly conundrums through Gotham's seedy underbelly. What will also hold your attention is how beautiful that underbelly looks. Working with his cinematographer, Greg Fraser, Reeves has rendered perhaps the best screen realization of Gotham so far. Do you know what? Reading all these reviews, and I mean, that's great what he's saying about Greg, but I just realized why I hate so many critics. I like some of them, not all of them. I don't want to generalize. But just reading these reviews, these 4 reviews, just reminds me why I hate these people. They just don't live in the real world. And they know very little about movies. So far, walking a careful tightrope between gritty realism and heightened pulp, lots of neon lights of rainfall without ever overplaying their hands. The result is some remarkable film craft of a level rarely seen in modern blockbusters. Michael Giacchino's brilliant minimalistic score completes the effect, building on the hugely effective work of Hans Zimmer, evolution rather than revolution. Matt Reeves' arrival in the Batverse is a gripping, beautiful shot neo-noir take on an age-old character, though not a totally radical refit of the Nolan-Snyder era. It establishes a Gotham City we would keenly want a return visit to. It's positive, but the reviewer was awful. I mean, I would expect nothing less from Empire. Dog Zane Zaka, it's surreal. Let Me In was a great vampire movie, and here Batman's visage is that of a vampire for the underworld. Can't wait. Listen, I'm reading these reviews, right, but I don't hold what these people do in any good regard or any respect. You hear how some of these nut jobs talk, right? They're not like us. They're not movie fans. They're just journalists doing a job. They couldn't give a shit. They have the privilege to see a film you have to wait to see. I know I had the privilege of watching it early, but at least I'm an ordinary person, right? These people talk utter shit. And as I keep on saying, they know nothing about films. They don't. Now, I don't expect someone watching a film to know how a film's made and things like that, but they act like they know more about films than we do. They don't like us, the public. But one thing you should say to a critic that you have a disagreement with constructively, where would you be without us? Nowhere. Where would directors and studios be without us? None of them like us, really. They pretend while they're marketing the film. But where would you be without us? A bit more respect, please. This is from Variety. The Batman Review. A tortured Robert Pattinson goes even darker than The Dark Knight. Cloverfield director Matt Reeves brings a tough new vision to DC's most easily reimagined character, channeling elements of film noir and a hard R horror movies by Peter Debuge of Variety. Where do you go after The Dark Knight? Ben Affleck blew it. What? Did he? Did Ben Affleck blow it? I don't think Ben Affleck. I thought Ben Affleck was a great Batman, Bruce Wayne, no mind. And even Christopher Nolan, who brought unprecedented levels of realism and gravitas to that franchise, best Batman saga, couldn't improve on what he created in his 2012 sequel. I don't agree. I don't agree. I thought The Dark Knight Rises is a great movie, actually. There you go. So what is Cloverfield director Matt Reeves' strategy? Answer, go darker than The Dark Knight. Deadlier than No Time to Die? Well, how can you compare an epic movie like The Batman with a damp squid like No Time to Die anyway? And longer than June, with a serious-minded Batman standalone of his own. Leaning into those elements doesn't automatically mean audiences will embrace Reeves' vision. But this grounded, frequently brutal and nearly 3-hour film, noir registers among the best of the genre, even if or more aptly, because what makes the film so great is its willingness to dismantle and interrogate the very concept of superheroes. I think that Matt Reeves isn't, he loves comics, obviously. He loves Batman, and I'm sure he's got other comics. I don't think he hates superheroes. I don't think he deconstructs Batman in this. And obviously, Zack Snyder deconstructed Batman and Superman. But I don't think that happens in this film. What it is saying, is what Batman does wrong. And from a certain point of view, an extreme left point of view, maybe Batman is wrong. Maybe he could just donate a bunch of money. He does that anyway. But ultimately, this is a damaged person. And he takes, instead of using that damage to inflict pain, and torture, and just profit himself, he protects people. It's a bit like Dexter, in the TV show Dexter. This is he was a child found in his own mother's blood. But instead of killing people, innocent people, he kills the people who kill other people. So you can say that's wrong or he's an incel, but at least they're trying to make some kind of difference. Dr. Ash Sacker, critics need crash courses from Scorsese before they review lol. Sure, that's been done before. Who watches The Watchmen? Alan Moore memorably asked, influencing decades of spandex-clad savior stories. Though Reeves does something relatively unique here, at least by comic book movie standards. He strips the genre of its supernatural elements even more than the Nolan trilogy did, and introduce a more complex version of a classic pulp hero who's only a whisker's breadth removed from the story's bad guy. Morally speaking, whereas these movies are typically defined by their villains, The Batman gets under your skin by asking, what if the good guys aren't really the good guys? Well, obviously, Matt Reeves is having commentary on the police. Because again, the extreme left don't like the police. There is an element of corruption in the police. No one can deny that. But what you put in their place? They don't have an answer for that, of course. And that's the element. So are superheroes wrong? Let's ask the question. Should Batman never become Batman? I'm sure to some people out there, he should just not do anything. Imagine the amount of lives in his fictional world that Batman saves. So he should just sit on his hands and do nothing, while the extreme left are just going on Twitter saying it's all men and, get rid of the police. What if the person we were counting on to protect us might actually be making the situation worse? Well, Batman isn't making the situation worse. He does save lives. It's as simple as that. While Batman, who's played here by gloomy Twilight star Robert Pattinson, representing the Alfred character's tortured psychology to an almost painful degree, focuses on punching out petty thugs in shadowed allies. And you can tell, of course, by a lot of these critics, they don't like superheroes and they don't like comics. In fact, they don't like fantasy and they don't like escapism. I don't actually know what they like. And on some way platforms, a Riddler genuinely disturbing Paul Dano emerges to dispose of the white-collar scoundrels embedded at the highest levels of power. Both men are vigilantes, though one is preoccupied with helping the police. How dare he? While the other targets the systemic corruption that undermines our faith in such institutions. In Gotham City, sure, but off-screen as well. In ways far more unsettling than most audiences might expect, the Batman channels the fears and frustrations of our current police climate, presenting a meaty full-course crime saga that blends elements of the classic gangster film with cutting-edge commentary about challenges facing the modern world. It's a hugely ambitious undertaking and one that's strong enough to work even without Batman's presence. Not that it would have any reason to exist without him exactly, full, but by incorporating the character in so many of the franchise's trademarks. Catwoman as Slinky Zoe Kravitz, the Penguin Colin Farrell, all but unrecognisable, Lowell Butler Alfred Andy Serkis, fully analogue, whatever that means, and an epic car chasing involving the latest iteration of the Batmobile. Reeves electrifies the dense, ultra-dark proceedings with an added level of excitement that justifies the film's relatively demanding runtime. It's not demanding. Dr. Shaka, I love the Dexter parallel. Makes sense. Yes, I think there's a bit of Dexter in this story as well. But it is the question, because these extremists keep on talking about Batman. Why doesn't he just donate money? Why does he have to be Batman? Well, some people in life are proactive, and some people are inactive and just gob off all the time. It's like, think about this. People like me are content creators, right? And we're all the time criticized and we're accused of this and we're accused of that by people who don't have the courage to come and do this, right? Who haven't got the confidence to come and do this. Now, if you ain't got the confidence, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you stay in your lane. But this is the problem with the world we live in today. From the beginning, the director breaks from the stylistic influence of the genre establishing tone that almost never feels derivative or other comic book movies. That said, one could certainly point to Jeff Loeb and Tim Sells' killer serial, The Long Halloween, as a common thematic influence between this and The Dark Knight. That's where crime boss Carmine Falcone, John Turturro, comes from. Though practical action sequences hew closer to Korean films like Old Boys than Nolan's Noir 70s style. No More Lies reads the blood-red indictment scrawled across the face of the Riddler's first victim. No less a figure than Gotham's unsavory mayor, Rupert Pendry Jones. That's just one of several grisly murders perpetrated by his maniacal avenger, who is twisted and self-righteous as that sicko from the Saw movies, Edward Nashton, aka the Riddler, wears greasy Coke bottle glasses and what looks like a leather fetish hood. It turns out to be a winter combat mask. live streaming his mind games on a message board for conspiracy crackpots. Conspiracy crackpots. But here's the twist. There really is a conspiracy among Gotham's most powerful. Yes, because sometimes conspiracy theorists actually know what they're talking about. One that traces back to the Wayne family, and it falls to Bruce to untangle it before it tears the city apart. Why him? The Riddler has drawn Batman in, leaving handmade cards loaded with ciphers and other puzzles at each of his crime scenes. Part of the film's reality is to avoid calling comic book characters by their traditional names. You no doubt noticed that in the title of the Batman and asked yourself what it's meant to signify. In using the definite article, Reeves isn't necessarily trying to say that he's created a definitive screen incarnation of the character. If anything, that tiny extra word casts an air of existential mystery around its masked and anonymous hero, who doesn't even know what to call himself early on. When the imposing leader of a violent street gang taunts, "Who the hell are you supposed to be?" The bat-clad vigilante growls back, "I'm vengeance." That's how Bruce Wayne thinks of himself when we first meet this version of the character. No origin story, but rather in media's arrest 2 years into defending Gotham from the brink of anarchy. Ravaged by a major narcotics epidemic courtesy of a street drug called Drops, the city finds itself facing the level of disorder somewhere between a pre-Giuliani Manhattan and the final minutes of Todd Phillips, the Joker. Though the two films exist in different dimensions of the same Gotham multiverse, retuning with production design James Chinlard, with whom he worked on the Planet of the Apes sequels, Reeves presents the most robust version of Gotham we've seen since Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. Clearly modelled on the New York City amplified through set extensions and stunning CGI, this seedy metropolis plunges us into the Big Apple rotten core. The Midtown equivalent of Times Square is illuminated by even more giant digital screens. A black cluster of buildings looms where Lower Manhattan would be, and you don't want to go anywhere near the Madison Square Garden-like arena where the finale takes place. At times, Batman surveys city from an upper floor of a half-built skyscraper. Otherwise, he zooms around at street level on his Batcycle, eventually upgrading to a souped-up muscle car, the unveiling of which is one of the film's big thrills. Except for hidden camera contact lenses, his technology is mostly realistic, and unless one counts a rooftop base jump, he can't fly, unlike so many DC comic book heroes. Batman is neither a god nor an alien. He has no fantastical abilities. Bruce Wayne's superpower is his billion-dollar fortune. But the guy behind the mask breaks and bleeds just like anybody else. A point Reeves reminds us of with a shot of Pattinson's bare back, covered in scars. Rather than leaning on a theme, Michael Giacchino's score surprises ranging from tense tribal drums to Nirvana's to opera, while editors William Hoy and Tyler Nelson avoid obvious angles, leaving quiet spaces for audiences to process and question what's happening. As the Batman or Vengeance, or whatever he's called, Pattinson is the most sullen of the actors to have played the character, which reads as a kind of daredevil nihilism, whether he's in costume. He doesn't seem fearless so much as ambivalent about whether he lives or dies once the cowl comes off. However, Pattinson's interpretation gets more intriguing, brooding, and withdrawn. He's a damaged loner with unresolved daddy issues. Oh, shut up. Saddled with all kinds of complicated emotional trauma. It's tough to see a hero hurting so much, and yet his troubled past informs every relationship, including the one with a lunatic who counts Bruce Wayne amongst his targets. The Riddler's schemes are genuinely scary, for more than seems reasonable for a PG-13 rated movie, like the remote-controlling exploding collar clamped on Peter Sarsgaard's drugged-up district attorney, Jill Coulson. The idea here is that some of Gotham's top-ranking officials, plus cat burglars come cocktail waitress Selena Kyle, are somehow mixed up with Falcone, and the Riddler has taken it upon himself to purge the system of such elements. The Chinatown intricate specifics of just how intertwined City Gotham is with organized crime can make your head spin, though Reeves lays it out relatively elegantly such that audiences can follow the many twists of Batman's investigation. Yeah, because we can't follow it because we're just a bunch of simpletons, aren't we? Dr. Shinagzaka, what makes the 70s cinema so great? All of Scorsese's, De Palma's, Coppola's work still ring true today. Batman can easily fit in their worlds of urban corruption and moral decay. Yeah, because urban corruption and moral decay has always been there, and it always will to a level. This is first and foremost a detective story, and what's that say? Unsentimental as they come. One half expects Gwyneth Paltrow's head to show up in a box at some point, and though the authorities take the Riddler into custody well before the end of the movie's most shocking stretch is still to come. Just when Gotham seems ready to celebrate its next chapter, it's hard to imagine how Reeves, who was shooting the Batman during early days of the pandemic, could have anticipated the Jan 6 Capitol riot, and yet the signs must have been there all along, for the film's chilling climax hinges on activating susceptible citizens to conduct a mass terrorist attack. This is very spoilery. Go away if you don't want to read it. Hear it. The Dark Knight of Heath Ledger's anarchist Joker felt like he stepped right out of your nightmares, but there's something even more intimidating about the way the Riddler operates. He literally triggers others to become vigilantes as well. And judging by the real-world copycats previous Batman movies inspired, such as Aurora, they love reminding us of these things and reminding impressionable people of these things as well. So irresponsible, shooting that could have consequences. Wouldn't you like that, though? Something for you to blame the film for. A movie like this will inspire countless debates. Does the Batman really need to be this dark? Can it hold a candle to Nolan's trilogy? There's room enough for both to exist and space for sequels to build on this foundation, which assumes a certain familiarity with the character's mythology. That's the beauty of Batman, who transcends all other heroes in the DC Comics stable. Like Dracula or Hamlet, this iconic anti-hero stands up to endless reinvention, where the campy or pop self-questioning of complicit, he tells us something new about ourselves every time he steps out of the shadows. So that was a very long review, an interesting one, definitely. Hit me before I start on another review. Hit me. Thank you for the 10 likes. It's better than nothing. So what we can see from these reviews is that they genuinely like the film. They have issues, some of them, with the length of the film. They have issues with the darkness of the film. The thing is, it's interesting. Zack Snyder got a lot of hate for the darkness and grittiness of Man of Steel, BVS, the Snyder Cut. Snyder Cut was a bit more lighter than the others. But, you know what I mean? Where Zack Snyder had that reputation, and for some reason, you know, critics, the public, don't really like him apart from his fans. Matt Reeves seems bulletproof. If anyone can get away with making a really dark, you know, take on a superhero character, it's Matt Reeves. He's a very popular figure in the industry, and they like the fact that he's making commentary about police corruption and incels. You know, they like all that. But it does, from what I'm reading so far, they like the film. They like some of the issues he's raising in the film. I don't understand the issue of the darkness or, you know, the length. Batman is a dark character. When I think of Batman, he is dark. And I think they said that Batman 89 was too dark. You know, imagine that. I think that Batman 89 is, and 92, the Returns, a sequel, are very stylized. They're dark, but they're in a stylized way. I love the way Burton makes Gotham like nothing we've ever seen before. I don't particularly like seeing Metropolis or Gotham, you know, like a city in our world. And I know they've compared this Gotham to New York. I'm not too sure about that. But you know what I mean? I want Metropolis to look like Metropolis rather than another city in the world. I want that escapism. So that's what we're getting from these reviews, really. They like the film. Is it too dark? Blah, blah, blah. It's interesting. What I was actually asking myself this in my head as I was reading that very long review that was killing my throat was, will this film go down as a classic? What I mean by that, will it be remembered? And we can't answer that question now, by the way. But will it be remembered like Batman 89, like Batman Returns, like Batman Begins, like, The Dark Knight? That's the film, isn't it? That's the go-to movie for comic books. People always talk about it, even today. And that was done, 10 years? Is it 10 years old? Something like that, anyway. And even Batman versus Superman, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's a classic. A film can be a classic while being divisive. So those films are classics and people will always go back to watch them. Is this a film that's going to get audiences going back and back and back? I want to see it again and again, for sure. I think it's an extraordinary film and an extraordinary achievement, and there's no question about that. But will audiences go back to relive and re-watch a 3-hour movie? They're the questions. These are the things that pose questions upon how much money this film can make. Do audiences have that concentration level to keep on going back? I know cinemaphiles will. I know the Pattinson stands and the Reeves stands will. And the Batman stands will. Because for a Batman stan, this is the ultimate Batman film. There's no question about that. But the other Batman films I've mentioned, and what's interesting to me, are popular, not just because people who love Batman embrace them, but the mainstream audience embraced them. Are the mainstream audience going to embrace the Batman? And I think it's going to be very interesting. No question this film will have a huge opening weekend globally. No question. But I'm interested in the second week and the third week. Will they come back for more? So it's interesting to see. Spider-Man No Way Home is an easy watch. It's a 2.5-hour movie, just over. It does what it says on the tin. You know what's going to happen, basically. So it has elements of darkness in it, but it's not a dark movie because Spider-Man isn't a dark character, but Batman is, as far as I'm concerned. It's a dark story. It's there in the comics. Gotham City is a never-ending, roundabout, Groundhog Day of corruption. Batman can never stop it, but he can make it easier, a lot better for people to live there. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I suppose, going bowling and hitting, you want to hit all the Skittles, right? But no matter how many times you hit those Skittles, that machine's going to bring more down, right? What is it that Batfleck says in BVS? Criminals are like weeds. No matter how many you pull up, more grow in its place. That is what Batman is. And that's why Batman lends himself to a dark take. So I don't know what the surprise is from these critics. So I find that very interesting. But as I say, these people are not movie experts. I grew up with a lot of critics. I didn't grow up with them, but I experienced them as a child in the 80s. And I just felt they understood the industry a lot more than these people are. These people are either just journalists or fans, right? And it's just interesting to me because it's a lot easier to become a critic today. You can become, you can become famous on YouTube or TikTok. You don't necessarily have to know anything about film. So when you talk about it, you end up, when you hear these people, you hear the nonsense that comes out of their mouths because they really don't sometimes come from a good perspective. And of course, it's better to be controversial these days because you become more famous and you make more money. And what I do is I'm just myself. I'm a fan. I'm on here because I love DC and I love entertainment. I will criticize things, but I won't do it purposely to get a reaction. And that's who I am. And I will never change that, no matter how unpopular I am or however popular I am in the future. The Batman Review, Robert Pattinson, Zoe Kravitz, and a complex Gotham makes this the best Bat movie since The Dark Knight. I love the fact that The Dark Knight gets all the love. I love The Dark Knight. But, I don't know if it's the best Batman film ever. I don't this one. I just don't know. This is by Ross Bonham of Collider. Matt Reeves, the Batman, throws on an excellent cast into the shadows of Gotham, one of Batman's best live-action outings. In The Batman, director Matt Reeves shows the darkness and terror within Gotham City before he ever presents his title character. But you know what? Should I say something as well? Gotham is a terrifying place. Even in the original comic, it's a terrifying place, right? And I think he's kind of the first director to show us it's a fucking terrifying place. You can't cope that. It is you wouldn't want to live there. You know, it's one of the worst places you'd want to live in the fictional world, right? First, Reeves presents the murder, theft, vandalism, and assault that is rampant throughout the city. But out of these shadows comes Batman, played by Robert Pattinson, who uses fear to stop the crime of Gotham. A blunt solution to a complicated problem. When Batman fights crime, it's equally blunt and few quick punches to a gang dressed in makeup that looks similar to such iconic criminals as Two-Face and Joker. Before the group disperses, Batman hasn't stopped the criminal element of Gotham. He simply delayed the crime for another night. Through voiceover, we learn that for 2 years, Bruce Wayne has been hitting the streets of Gotham, dressed as Batman using fear as a tool, and crime has only risen. It's been 20 years since his parents were murdered, and while he wants to stop the crime that led him to become an orphan, it certainly seems like Wayne's attempts to combat the villainy of his city have only backfired. Batman might not be the solution he believes himself to be, but rather the indirect cause of Gotham's myriad of problems. While we've seen plenty of Batman takes over the decades, never before has a live-action Batman quite dealt with the moral grey area that this superhero works in, quite like the Batman. Let me ask you a question then. Before there was a Batman, did Gotham City still have a problem? I have nothing further, Your Honour. Reeves starts the Batman with the city, the corruption, the crime, and it becomes clear that what makes the Batman so different from other Batman movies is that this isn't a Batman film. This is a Gotham film. Anyway, the Batman isn't exactly introducing new ideas that we haven't seen before in a Batman film. It's simply focusing on components that have often been in the background of previous Batman films. Villains in the past might have used the duplicitous nature of Gotham's finest as an excuse for their crimes. But with the Batman, this dishonesty and misconduct becomes a central piece for this puzzle, even more important to the story than Paul Dano's disturbing and unsettling Riddler. The Batman largely centralizes on the idea of Bruce Wayne being the world's greatest detective, teaming the hero with Jeffrey Wright's James Gordon to solve a series of puzzles and murders from the Riddler that is terrorizing Gotham. This is a cop duo pairing, and the horrific nature of Riddler's puzzles makes large swaths of the Batman's clear homage to David Fincher's Seven. From the Riddler's morbid clues left amongst the blood to teach Gotham a lesson to Riddler's dingy apartment, Reeves' take on the villain feels at times like an alternate take on the Seven John Doe as well, yet putting this type of darker mystery at the centre of a Batman film does make this reference not feel as egregious as, say, Joker's borrowing from the King of Comedy. I didn't mind them stealing that. I didn't see the problem in that. Anyway, is this journey to take down the Riddler? Reeves, who co-wrote the screenplay with Peter Graves, gives us a Batman who is still trying to figure out how to be the Dark Knight, even more so than the origin story of Batman Begins. The Batman shows Bruce Wayne often struggling to be the hero he wants to be. Bruce is frequently clumsy or in over his head, and again Pattinson plays him with bluntness, as if he can't seem to see the faults in his plans until it's too late. More than any other Batman, Pattinson plays this character as part of an emo kid. We're introduced to Bruce blasting Nirvana in his Batcave, located under a bridge, as black eye makeup trails down his face, but also a man who has been hurt by this city and wants to make sure what happened to him never happens to anyone again. It's an illogical task, but this Bruce is willing to die to make the impossible possible. Something I love about this version as well. He's willing to die. He's actually willing to sacrifice himself. As Batman, Pattinson focuses on the fear within the character with an underlying seething anger he's ready to let loose at any moment. While the Batman doesn't show us the death of his parents, thank God. Shut up! We can see the wounds still coming to the surface, the pain that has been inflicted on him and that has caused him to be this way. Pattinson is great at these types of performances, where what's most important is what is left unsaid, and he uses this to excellent effect with this version of the character. But the Batman nails the casting of all these classic characters, not just Pattinson's stoic Batman or Dano's uneasy Riddler. Wright makes for a perfect Gordon, a good cop surrounded by corruption, while Andy Serkis' take on Alfred Pennyworth is beautifully marries the character's unspoken past with a tremendous amount of love for Bruce. Colin Farrell steals every scene he has as Oswald Cobblepot. The Penguin, an extraordinarily fun performance that leans heavily into a Robert De Niro impersonation at times. Even antagonists without some type of villain gimmick shine here due to the excellent casting, such as Peter Sarsgaard as the unscrupulous district attorney, Jill Coulson, or John Turturro, who makes a Carmine Falcone into the puppet master behind Gotham's underworld. Yet the standout amongst this fantastic cast is Zoe Kravitz. You're saying that Kravitz is better than anybody else? Anybody else? Anyway, great performance. Love Zoe, but anyway, as Selena Kyle Catwoman, who gets tied into Batman's hunt for the Riddler. The chemistry between Pattinson and Kravitz is almost overwhelming, and their dynamic is the only time that Batman allows himself to lighten up a bit, which only makes both characters even more endearing. Kravitz plays Carl as Bruce, another person hurt by Gotham, yet without the optimism that the city can change. Catwoman has always been an anti-hero to some extent, but through Kravitz's performance, her take almost makes us realize she probably has the more grounded take on Gotham's future. Oh, yeah, she's a woman. She must be right. Catwoman has had its share of excellent takes in film, but Kravitz comes extremely close to being the best take on this character. Yeah, no one's saying she's the best take. That's interesting. So Michelle Pfeiffer's iconic legacy stands up then. Shows you how great Batman Returns is. Again, what makes the Batman a unique take on this tried and true story is that focus on Gotham, the effect it has had on these characters, and the seeming impossibility to make an actual change in the world this torn apart. From the opening scene of the Riddler taking down a dishonorable politician named Don Homages to the leaves breaking New Orleans to discussions about promises of renewal being a lie, it's hard not to see the real world parallels, and don't you just love it, in the Batman, and understand the most overwhelming suffocation of this Gotham. So I'm just replying to someone. You don't mind, do you? You're probably no one on the chat anymore. Oh no, we have 3 people. Wow. So where are we? Right. But it's Reeves' focus on the world of Gotham that makes the Batman something truly distinctive in the world of live-action Batman films. Usually Gotham is a little more than a wicked city churning out supervillains, but Reeves makes his Gotham into a living, breathing city, one where we can see the consequences of the deception and fraud at the top, and how it hurts everyone underneath. While the Riddler's tactics are clearly villainous, it's easy to see why someone dealing with this unavoidable nightmare would want to purge the city of its sin. Now, this is very similar, not in its execution, but what they did with Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, where he believes that Gotham should just be fucking destroyed. You know, it's never going to get better. Just fucking kill everyone. That's the attitude. But this way of showing a different angle on entertainment that is already well established is what Reeves does so well. With Cloverfield, he took a city-destroying monster film and told the story from the perspective of those running away from the destruction. With Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes, he reinvestigated this franchise from the viewpoint of the apes in a grounded and surprisingly touching way. With the Batman, Reeves continues this trend by spending more time in the trenches of Gotham, showing the insurmountable challenge that Batman has ahead of him, and creating a richer version of this city than we usually get in these films. Again, no point doing other creators' content down. They did what they did, right? At 3 hours long, the Batman flies by thanks to Reeves' direction. He takes time to focus on the city, the heroes, the villains, and the legacy of Gotham that has led to this scenario. Reeves and Craig's screenplay handles Gotham with care and consideration. A city ruled by men who lived in the murkiness of their situation. Led by men! Men! Evil men! All men are evil! Right? Anyway, just because that's how these people think, right? Anyway, who lived in the murkiness of their situation, many of which had the best of intention, yet become overtaken by reality. Reeves doesn't rush by the structure of what makes Gotham the way it is, and still manages to make the Batman move at a clip. I wonder what it'd be like to live in the mind of these people, though, that all men are evil, right? Well, all white men are evil, and everyone else has never put a foot wrong in their lives. If it wasn't for us men, the world would be a better place. They actually believe that. The Batman is also just a gorgeous film with cinematographer Greg Fraser, June, Rogue One, Zero Dark 30, that embraces the darkness, but never feels saturated by it. And the commanding, powerful score by Michael Giacchino, with a Batman theme that almost feels like it was birthed out of the Imperial March. Like its cast, Reeves has clearly found the best team to bring this version of Batman to life at every step. But the biggest problem with the Batman is that despite all the Fincher inspiration and phenomenal cast and crew, there still has to be a Batman film. Oh no! A Batman film? You mean a film called The Batman is about Batman? How dare you! Oh my God, these people are mad. Anyway, can't help but start to hit the notes one would expect from a superhero film. While the film's major action set pieces is expertly handled, it does feel somewhat tonally at odds with what the rest of the film has done. Hang on a minute, right? So you've got a gritty movie, but then they've got to do action, so that makes it tonally different. Told you they know jack shit about what they're talking about. At the end of the day, The Batman is the beginning of a trilogy planned by Reeves, and he's on track to be the source of at least 2 HBO Max spin-off series, and the end of The Batman is stuck setting up these future stories, for better or for worse. It should be expected that The Batman would be part of a bigger whole, but especially in the final act, it's hard not to sort of hope that The Batman could exist on its own terms, to take its own chances and try to break the mold a bit more, especially considering what the film is doing up until at that point. Still, Reeves has made the best Batman film since The Dark Knight, with a captivating and rich world that reinvigorates characters we've already seen on screen over and over again. With The Batman, Reeves prioritises the shadows of Gotham, setting up his city in a way we've never seen before on screen, bringing life to the world around Batman instead of heroes and villains that live in black and white. Reeves has presented a city defined by the grey. The Batman doesn't redefine what we know about this character, but through Reeves' direction, we've shown a Batman story. We're shown a Batman story in a way we've never quite seen before. While most other Batman films focus on the hero that comes out of the darkness, Reeves has focused on the darkness that hero came out of, which makes all the difference. Rating B+. Oh dear. They do make me laugh. So that's another review out the way. I hope you're enjoying me reading these reviews. It's what I'm here for tonight. We waited all day to have the embargo lifted. So you're really seeing kind of what these people think and what they think of this film. Some people are saying the action doesn't mold well with the other parts of the film. But as Matt said himself, you've got to have the normal trappings. You could do the most amazing Bond film, which is just all character developed. But who's going to sit there watching a Bond film? Say that Matt Reeves makes a 3-hour Bond film. Who's going to sit there watching that with no action in it, right? You know, so you've got to marry the two together, which Matt did really, really well, by the way. So some of their criticisms don't make sense. And sometimes they try and balance their positivity with a little bit of negativity. A lot of critics do that. Oh, no, I haven't said anything negative. I better balance it out. That's what they're like. So it's interesting. I don't really hold much to what these people say. I think it's interesting to gauge what's going on with this film. But ultimately, you know, it's a great movie that's going to be very successful. Whether it's an endearing classic, that's another case in point. We're going to have to wait a few years to know that. So does anyone know the current Rotten Tomato scores for The Batman? If you do, put them up here. I want to know. And very shortly, we'll go to the next review by Shiraz Faruqi very shortly. But if you've got anything to ask, all 7 of you, let me know. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when I read reviews for MCU movies, I rarely read anything negative. And it's amazing to me when someone like Matt has gone to this effort to make something extremely special. You know, it's too long, it's too dark. You know, do you really think do you really think that Batman is going, do you really think Matt Reeves was going to make a Batman Forever or a Batman and Robin? I mean, those films were iconic in themselves. I mean, Batman and Robin is probably iconic for the wrong reasons, but people still remember that film for the wrong reasons. So it's always good as a movie, especially about Batman or any other iconic character, to be remembered. There's some people who actually like Batman and Robin. I watched it and I wasn't disappointed in it, to be honest. I had fun with it. But that's not really what a Batman drama should be about, because it takes away who Batman is, in my opinion. But that came from the studio back then. They wanted to sell toys, and they wanted the most popular actor at the time to play Batman, and that was George Clooney. The Batman Review, the quintessential Bruce Wayne story. The Batman is bold, brutal, and one of the best DC films of all time. In a superhero movie climate where cameos and CGI-heavy sequences are commonplace, the Batman answers back with cinema. Matt Reeves takes the helm of the newest Batman franchise with the same gusto and vigor of the final two parts of Planet of the Apes, treated by many as one of the best modern film trilogies. Taking on the challenge of Batman, Reeves leaves his imprint on the character in a fantastically poignant way. Featuring a younger, emotional, broken Bruce Wayne, Reeves flexes his directing muscles to rebirth Batman without losing his essence. A detective story set in a Gotham City that oozes gritty and humid personality. The Batman is immersed in dark undertones, not unlike Batman the Animated Series. There is a very little time given to handhold the audience into Batman's origin story or why Bruce put on the mask. Many of those details are still fresh in the audience's mind from previous films. Instead, Reeves opts to place viewers right into the middle of Batman's story, akin to picking up random comic from the shop and flicking through the pages. Batman is simply Batman, and audiences get to enjoy a new adventure with him. Reeves takes the best from past Batman directors, combining the detailed grittiness and visual excellence of Snyder's work, weaving it with the grounded dialogue, focused storytelling of Nolan's craft to create something bold and new for the franchise. The Batman feels quintessential to the character. Everything from the architecture of Gotham City to the many DC name drops feels completely organic and definitive. One reason it all comes together in the cast. Robert Pattinson effortlessly transforms Bruce Wayne, and it's no surprise those familiar with Pattinson's work over the last 10 years know he's become one of the best modern actors in the business. And he approached Wayne with the same craft as his recent roles. This iteration of Bruce Wayne is darker, recluse, and a far cry from the billionaire playboy monikers that Bale and Affleck's versions of the character mastered. Because being a playboy is wrong, isn't it? Because it's about capitalism. Capitalism is wrong. Did you know that? It's wrong. Even though we all live in capitalism, right? We're doing nothing to stop capitalism, right? But it's wrong. It's wrong. Anyway, this Bruce does not know how to appear in public. He only knows how to be Batman, with Bruce just an external avatar of the beast within. It is a classic Batman archetype, but Pattinson is flawless in the role. Joining him is Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman. Kravitz is the best live-action Selena Kyle today. She's great. I love her. I'm not saying I don't like her. I just don't think that you could just say she's the best. Ripped straight from the pages of the comic books and that birthed her, Kravitz elegantly steps into the role without losing the edge that makes the character special. Her chemistry with Pattinson is incredible, layered, and the actress is more than capable to lead her franchise as the anti-hero. Likewise, Andy Serkis, a longtime collaborator of Reeves, plays a strong and stoic Alfred. A cross between Jeremy Irons and Michael Caine's iterations of the character, Serkis plays Alfred with a caring but strong demeanor. The bar for Batman movie villains has been incredibly high, with the Dark Knight trilogy masterfully weaving multiple Batman villains into its franchise and a wider range of DC villains for Affleck in the Snyderverse. Reeves went back to basics to craft his Batman story with a combination of Riddler, Penguin, and Carmine Falcone rounding the rogues gallery. Reeves expertly weaves Batman into confronting each villain at different times, once again resembling a wide-ranging yet focused comic book story. Where the modern DCEU is cluttered, messy, and left without a true vision, why? Is there a place to talk like this in a Batman review? The Batman is a breath of fresh air. You see, the thing is, my friend, the DCEU will have a distinct vision when we see the Flash movie. We've already seen that distinct vision in Peacemaker. We're going to go on seeing it this year. But anyway, you carry on. The Batman is a breath of fresh air. Reeves directs Batman with a love and passion that will reverberate with fans and newcomers alike. The cast is loyal to the director's vision, and the result is a resounding Batman film with incredible long-term franchise potential. Weaving the vision, cast performance, and set design together is a stunning score by Michael Giacchino, who immediately gives Batman another iconic score to add to an already diverse portfolio. Overall, The Batman is a quintessential Dark Knight film and one of the best DC films of all time, with incredible performances, flawless directing, and a resounding score. The Batman is a masterpiece, 5 out of 5. So that's really good to hear, isn't it? And that's your reviews, everyone. That's your reviews. We've been on air for 2 hours, over 2 hours, and I am knackered. But we can have a little chat for a few minutes if you've got anything to say. Dr. Asher Aksa, I think it's Marvel that's left without a vision, which is all flash, no substance. DC is going to places this decade and beyond with multiple storylines. I agree, Dr. Asher Aksa. We are going places. I think DC is the place to be. A lot of exciting things happening in DC live action. And unless you're really biased, I think everyone can see what's going on with what Walter Hamada and Jim Lee are trying to build. And it's got a lot of interesting creatives there. And so I'm very, very excited for the future. I think it's a great future. I really do. Yeah, the throat's definitely going, but you try talking for 2 hours. So, yeah, the reviews were interesting, not without pointing fault. Some were simplistic reviews. Some went really into it, maybe even got a bit spoilery at times. It's very interesting to look at the mentality of these critics. And, you know, sometimes you think, Jesus, if they don't like someone, like they don't like Snyder, they'll just tear the film to pieces. And unfortunately, these films can rise and fall by what these people say. I do feel they're getting less and less powerful. John Coloni, DC is the place to be, however, because of the wobble bob. I don't know what the wobble bob is, my friend. So there you go, everyone. It looks like mostly everyone is loving the Batman. Fans have already seen it. Not lots of fans, but some people have gone to early screenings. Tomorrow, I think there's fan premieres as well, which is going to be very exciting. So as we go on now, more and more people would have seen the Batman. It's clearly a redefining movie. We'll wait and see how well it does in the box office. This is going to be very, very interesting now. What happens to this movie financially? But I think whatever happens, Matt will be back to tell more stories. Whether this makes $1 billion, $2 billion, or even 500, 600 million, whatever it makes, I believe this is another Batman Begins. Batman Begins didn't make a lot of money, but Warner Brothers showed faith in Nolan and let him do The Dark Knight. Think about that. A Batman movie that didn't make a lot of money got one of the best CBMs of all time because of the faith of the studio. So I think we're at a place now where it doesn't really matter how much money this film makes. But I'm going to be very interested now because my opinions are, I prefer to know what people think, fans think of these movies, rather than critics who have got nothing invested in them. Ken Tobias, I was watching the reviews from the YouTube and many are excited. Well, I hope they're excited. I'm excited. I think what a time to be alive. This is a revolutionary film. And, the man's got his own universe, his own Earth, and he can do whatever the fuck he wants with it. And once you see this film, it's fascinating commentary in the world at large, but of Batman as well. And I think it's an interesting take from someone who clearly loves the character. It's a very exciting time. It's when you talk about the Batman and then you compare it to Marvel, it's art versus showboating in a way. It's like that magician who can't do magic, who tells you you've got something behind your ear. And that's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is. It's just an illusion of greatness. Dr. Yakizaka, I'm thinking 1.2 billion. That would be amazing. Let's see how it does. Will it get close to what Joker did? Let's not forget, Joker made a lot of money. So it's going to be interesting how this film does financially, because it sets a template for the rest of the year, for the rest of the DCEU content. So, or the DCEU content, because of course the Batman isn't part of the DCEU at the moment. So we will wait and see. But I'm intrigued about how people look at this film, how the audience respond to this film. The critics have had their say, stands have had their say. Now it's time for that audience to go to cinemas, watch the film, and give their opinions. From all the ordinary people, the fans who have gone to see it, the reactions to me have been very positive. Has been happy. I think it's around 500, 650 million. Ooh. People would call that a flop. Obviously, it only cost around 100 million to make. It would be a very profitable film for WB. Let's see. That's an interesting prediction. And I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, because at this moment in time, I'm just not sure. The opening is very important. If it brings in around 200 million, that's going to be a great opening weekend. Wasn't it predicted for 200 million in America? Wasn't I right there? I don't know. But the time for projections is over. And predictions. We're going to see very quickly. I mean, it's released in Cyprus on the 3rd, some places around the world the 4th. So I can go and see it on March the 3rd. But I'm dying to see what everyone thinks of this film. It's certainly one of those films that's going to draw opinions, and it's going to be very interesting. So in terms of reviews, they like the film. This is not a BVS. So we know that. They like the film. Dr. Zanigzaka, yes, opening is at 200 million. Let's see if he actually gets that. That'll be interesting. Has been me, and I hope I'm wrong, as always. Well, even a broken clock, Hashmil and Hashlin, me, is right twice a day. Don't forget that. Dr. Ashiazaka, everyone needs to come out and see it. Yes, I think audiences will be intrigued. The intrigue's there. The excitement's there. It's going to make money. It's going to make good money. But how good? We'll have to wait and see. I think Batman and Superman movies should be making at least $1 billion. And if they don't, there's questions that have to be asked, unfortunately. Because Matt has gone out on a limb. He has done something, something that's not just about action focused and, trying to put camouflage or, try and make something that doesn't look good. He's tried to tell a real story. He's tried to set something up here. And he should be applauded for that. But that doesn't always go down well with mainstream audiences. And they are the vital component for this film to reach $1 billion. Will they like it? And I think Batman Begins, the reason Batman Begins didn't have a great box office wasn't because it wasn't a good film, because it's a great movie, one of my favorite Batman movies. It's because people were still hungover from Batman and Robin. And they took out that frustration on Batman Begins. And then you see how much The Dark Knight made. But The Dark Knight would never have been possible without Batman Begins' foundations. And that's a very important thing to say. But Batman is a very popular character. That's why we're going to see him 3 times this year. He's huge. I think what WB have done after having the situation where they can't use Ben Affleck is, what do? And they've come, having Matt Reeves there was a great answer, doing something so original. And he's captured people's imaginations. Then you think of, right, we can't have Ben Affleck in the DCEU. What do? Michael Keaton, a really popular, iconic version of Batman. Again, a genius move. And, who knows? Christian Bale, there's lots of possibilities out there still. Who knows? So we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, as we start to finish off this video, critics overwhelmingly loved the Batman, as I expected to happen. a couple of dissenting voices, a couple of nitpicks, but mostly they love this movie. And that's a good thing. But they were always going to like this film, and we all know that. Dosha Ashik Zaka, already friend, time to call it a day. Hope to see you someday in London. For now, everyone, let's go out and see the Batman. I couldn't agree more. So thank you, everyone, unless you've got any other comments. But yeah, I'm going to ring it up now because my voice, you know. But I've really enjoyed reading out the reactions and reviews, engaging what these people think of this movie. What I want to see next, and maybe we'll read some, maybe tomorrow's live, we can read, or when the film's released, we can read some reactions from the people who matter the most, the fans. They're the reactions I'm really interested in, to see what people make of this noir detective drama. And if people, especially the mainstream audience, are going to go back for more. That's utterly vital for this film to make the money the studio want. But whatever this film makes, I'll reiterate, I believe Matt Reeves is part of the DC universe now, and he isn't going anywhere. This has been Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again for the DC EU Daily, should I say, and another live video at the same time, same place, same back channel. Until then, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for the likes. I really, really do appreciate it. I swear I had more likes before. Now I have less likes. I don't know what's going on there. Never mind. Doesn't matter. I've enjoyed myself. I've enjoyed talking to you geeks and nerds. And The Batman, one of the hugest films of all time, is coming out. And it's a DC movie. And it's the beginning of a huge precipice for DC live action. And I can't wait to get to the end of the year to see how all our DC movies have done. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.